What can Kansas expect from the UCF Knights? They've got some quarterback injuries. What is Kansas coming into this game? Can the Jayhawks beat the Knights? We get into that on this crossover edition of Locked On Jayhawks, Locked On UCF.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF and Locked On Jayhawks. It's a Locked On crossover. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On UCF and Locked On Jayhawks your first listen of every single day. Turn us up, turn us on, we'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend Derek Johnson, host of Locked On Jayhawks, to talk a little Jayhawk night football. Derek, on today's show, we're going to talk about who these two teams are. What's the word on the street for UCF and Kansas? Players to watch in our second segment. And then we're going to talk about that spread. Is this a coin flip this weekend? The matchup predictor on ESPN has had some very interesting predictions. We're going to talk about that all today on the show. Let's start at the top. Word on the street for UCF and Kansas. Before we started recording, you and I talked a little bit about that Kansas offensive line versus the UCF defensive line. It sounds like these two teams might be twinsies in terms of who's got, like, where the issues lie. And I think both these defensive lines could eat against both these offensive lines. That could lead to a messy game.
Yeah, I mean, I correct me if I'm pronouncing this wrong. Nigel Kelly is okay. Yep. Him and Malachi Lawrence. I mean, you're looking at two guys who can rack up the pressures. And when I look at that going against the KU offensive tackles, which at times have given up a lot of pressure. I mean, Jalon Daniels took a lot of hits in the Fresno State game. He took a good amount of hits in some of the other games and has had to kind of scramble his way out of sacks and out of pressures to try to throw downfield and make some things happen. Versus the other side, you were kind of explaining to me and looking at some of the grades and the offensive line run push stuff, like the UCF offensive line might have had some struggles. And even though we've seen the ups and downs, the roller coasters of the Kansas defense, I would say that the strength of the Kansas defense is the defensive line. So I actually think this is going to be a very interesting matchup on both ends that is kind of similar in a lot of ways.
Talk to us about Leroy Harris III, 3.5 sacks on the season right now. Again, this line for UCF got their first starting quarterback killed in game one versus Jacksonville State. He has not returned as a starter since. But when you look at the PFF stats on Leroy Harris and a little bit of game film I've watched, he is hell to deal with down there, man.
Yeah, it's crazy because he came in as a FCS transfer from Tennessee, Chattanooga. He was a freshman who didn't record any sacks at Chattanooga, had some good moments here or there, but limited playing time. And he came into Kansas as a year two player, and it was kind of like, okay, we like this player. He's intriguing, but maybe he'll be more a long-term player. Well, you get to the first week of the season, week 0 for Kansas, and Dean Miller, who was their All Big 12 second-team defensive end from a season ago, is hurt. And he misses the first game. He plays sparingly in the second game. And so Harris gets extra opportunity, and boy, is he taking advantage of it. Justice Finkley's starting to come around at the other defensive end spot, a transfer from Texas as well. And it just feels like those three guys, Finkley, Miller, and Harris, have provided a little juice for KU off the edge. But Harris is kind of this lengthy, athletic defensive end. Like he's a fun prospect to watch out there. And he's certainly somebody who can wreck a game. And as bad as the KU defense was against Cincinnati last week, they couldn't get a stop. They give up the 37 points in the end. They somehow, you go look at Pro Football Focus, they had 27 pressures, which is like a lot to get in the game. So
right.
I don't know if some of that was overblown by maybe it's just like is it a pressure? Is it not? Because it didn't feel like Brendan Sorsby was really hit or affected that often. But we've seen some other games where they've been able to rack up some pressures. And yeah, he can definitely be kind of a game changer on the outside.
Yeah, you talked about Malachi Lawrence. This is a guy who we had our eye on coming into the season as a game changer for UCF. I think he's going to have, I won't say an easy time, but he should be able to have some success versus this Kansas offensive line. Again, before we started recording, you talked about maybe some of the weakness of that line being at the tackle spot. What's Kansas look like at left tackle here? You've got to protect the blind side of that quarterback, and it's difficult, man, when you're weak at tackle.
Yeah, I am still petitioning for. I think anybody with the last name Lawrence has to play for KU, which resides in Lawrence, Kansas. So we'll see if that gets changed over by the time game time happens. But yeah, that's been something for KU. It was interesting. The right tackle spot was kind of the one that was up in the air in the offseason. But Enrique Cruz, transfer from Syracuse, is really taken that and run with it. He's had a good start to the season. The left tackle spot, which was the one that they were so certain about, that, okay, Calvin Clements, former kind of 3-4 star, like right in that range recruit, was committed to Baylor, flips, comes to Kansas, local kid, and a very talented player. Got in as a true freshman in the bowl game, ended up starting because one of the players opted out to go to the NFL draft, got some playing time last year as a redshirt freshman. Redshirt sophomore year was supposed to be, with this year, the kind of breakout year for him. It's been inconsistent. He's been pretty good in the run blocking game, but as a pass blocker, there's been some rough games and some rough moments in there. And he's a player that I have a very high future on. I think he's going to turn out in the same way that, we saw with Bryce Cable do for KU. Ended up being a 6th-round draft pick, struggled a bit his first couple of years, but eventually developed into a really good lineman his last couple of years at Kansas. I think that'll be Clements. But the problem is right here and now, against a couple of really good UCF defensive ends, that might be an advantage for UCF. The good news for KU is they tend to do a good job between having mobile quarterback, having good play calling, using the tight ends to chip, though the tight ends have struggled a bit this year in blocking. They usually do a good job to try to scheme their way around any weaknesses or issues they have, but that definitely is one of the worry matchups I have coming into this game for KU.
Yeah, look, on the other side, Nigel Kelly is going to be key for UCF. Talking about protecting that second level for both teams, some really good linebacker play coming here on both. For UCF, there's Lewis Carter, who leads UCF in tackles. But on the other side, talk to me about Trey Lathan, man. He leads Kansas in tackles. He's a machine, hurrying the quarterback. He's got a couple sacks. He's doing it all for the Jayhawks.
Florida kid too. And he is somebody who's going to have an even bigger role in this game because, we can touch on this later, but the availability report will be really interesting for these two teams. Obviously, the quarterback injuries with UCF. For Kansas, it's not a question of, we know Bengali Kamara is going to miss the first half. He had a targeting call in the second half against Cincinnati. I thought it was kind of a soft call, but you can go back and watch it and make a decision for yourself. But Kamara has been really good, and Trey Lathan's been really good, both linebackers for KU. This is a position that was a problem for KU their first 4 years of Lance Leipold era. It feels like this is the best linebacking core they've had. And both of those guys can run. They can move sideline to sideline. They're good in pass coverage for linebackers. Lathan's had a great start to the season. Now, this will be a little bit different of a test because a lot of the teams they've played have had more, I would say, kind of rugged, powerful running backs. Whereas it feels like the sense I'm kind of getting from UCF is it's more explosive speed style. So I don't know if that'll be a good thing or a bad thing there, but yeah, Lathan's been kind of an awesome addition for KU out of the portal from inside the conference at West Virginia.
Yeah, before we get to the break here, protecting that second level, super important to have solid linebacker play here. When you talk about these two run games, you've got Kansas with the 5th best run game in the conference so far. Tracking right behind them at 7 is UCF. UCF's been very boom or bust, though, in the run game. I'm not sure how much I trust that run game right now because a lot of that success coming versus North Carolina A&T, which certainly put an asterisk by that. And then it took them a while, but they did find some footing running the ball versus Kansas State last week. Just too late. They're going to have to get out to a fast start early here. And, if Lathan is on his game, man, getting through that second level is going to be really difficult for UCF in the run game.
Yeah, and KU's defensive tackles is probably the biggest. If defensive line's probably the biggest strength, and inside that is the defensive tackles. So when you combine those guys with the linebackers, that's where KU's been good against the run. They've given up a few too many explosives, but they've been pretty good at, so this is interesting because this actually fits right into what UCF has been doing in kind of being an explosive running team that's been a little inconsistent. Kansas is 35th in the country defensively in negative play rate defensively. So they're getting TFLs. They're getting, 1 or 2 yard losses in that running game, but they're also 70th in the country in explosive rush defense. So they're giving up big plays, but they're getting some big ones on their own. So I don't know if that's a good thing because it kind of plays right into the hand of what UCF is already doing, or if that's a bad thing because, maybe it's just more of the same. And will that be enough to beat Kansas? I don't know. But that is something that Kansas is trying to work on is avoid those. They give up like a 46-yard run in under 2 minutes to go in the first half against Cincinnati. Those final 2 minutes of halves have been a real problem for KU the last couple of years. But I do think that'll be really interesting as well, kind of the explosiveness of UCF against a KU defense that has been solid in some areas, but has given up way too many explosives in others.
Running the ball on the road, super important. The bounce house is going to be hell for Kansas. I know fans have a renewed sense of hope in year one of the Scott Frost era. And so defending home field is something that they've talked about in that locker room quite a bit. They take a lot of pride in it. And you can't let another team come into your house and run the ball on you and control the clock. Last week versus Cincinnati, Kansas losing time of possession by nearly 9 minutes. Killer, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how they match up there. I feel like really solid defensive line play and linebacker play on both sides for these teams. Whose offensive line is going to fail faster might be the question about which determines the winner in this one. But look, we want to talk about our players to watch, our potential players of the game here with Kansas at UCF. We'll talk about that next, right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings you your entire financial life together in one clear, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your mobile device. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. I'm busy. Derek's busy. We're all busy. And if you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. This episode of Locked On UCF is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I have a really sad FanDuel story that I'm going to tell until the end of time, or until such a time as I hit my parlay. So get ready for it. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app today, and get started. That's $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel.com. Derek, I put together a 9-leg parlay, basketball parlay, and the last leg of the parlay was Draymond Green over 7.5 points. He needed 8 points. He scored 7 points and fouled out. He was the last leg of the parlay. I got $300 in bonus bets from FanDuel, and I put it all on this one parlay. Pay out $22,000. I have hated Draymond Green ever since. I thought about tweeting the parlay card at him and be like, hey, man, hook your boy up with like half this because you fouled out like a jerk, playing like a jerk.
Hey, at least it wasn't one of the games he got ejected for, one of his
it might as well have been an ejection.
Yeah.
Dude, it was a foul on like an inbound pass, a frustration foul. I was so at the beginning of the fourth quarter, I was like 2 free throws and I win. Anyway, look, we're not going to be watching Draymond Green. We're going to be watching Tayven Jackson. We're going to be watching your guy, Jalon Daniels at quarterback. There are going to be some players to watch in this one. On the UCF side, Tayven Jackson, we found out last week this team goes as Tayven Jackson goes.
So are you expecting him to play?
Yes, I am expecting him to play right now. Look, he was hurt. He came back, and they can't not have Tayven Jackson out there. They need him out there. So it was a drastically different. And, interestingly, UCF didn't go back to Cam Fancher. They went to Ja'Carri Brown, who was on the team last year. And he had a chance at the starting job, but when it was time to throw, could not hit the broadside of a barn. Excellent runner. He can run the football, but behind an offensive line that is struggling in run blocking, that kind of neutralizes his ability to be able to run the ball. And I don't know, man. Tayven has done a good job handling the rush, finding players downfield and making plays when they need him. Tayven Jackson is absolutely the player to watch on the UCF side. I don't know if you can win without him at this point. The talent gap is still too great. There's some very talented players at the skill positions, but this team goes as the quarterback goes. And without him, you don't have much of an offense if you're Scott Frost. Talk to me about Kansas, man. Who are we watching on that Kansas offense right now that's making them go?
Yeah, well, and real quick, the parallels too of I just realized the 2023 matchup when these two teams played. I think that was John Reese Plumlee's like first or second game back from whatever injury he had at that time. And I think he got hurt on like one of the first or two drives trying to play through the injury. And then it ended up being Timmy McClain the rest of the way. Hopefully a little better injury luck at quarterback this time for UCF. You hate to see that. But yeah, I think for Kansas, I mean, you could point back to that offensive line. You could point to Jalon Daniels and see his legs, but I would point to LeSean Williams. He's running back transfer from Iowa. Daniel Highshaw, their normal starter for the beginning of the year. He's been hurt and he didn't appear on the 2 deep this week, which he was out last week. So it kind of seems like that's the indication that he's going to be out again this week. And Williams has taken over as the go-to back. And I think for Kansas to win this game on the road, they have to do a better job of establishing the run. They still had a decent running game against Cincinnati, but to your point on the time of possession difference, especially with a defense that has struggled for KU, you want to keep that defense off the field. You want to keep them rested. And the best way to do that is control the running game. I mean, Kansas had a huge passing game against Cincinnati, over 400 yards. They still lost the game. I can't help but think if they could go back in time, would Lance Leipold, would Jim Zabrowski call the offense a little bit differently? Not that it was unsuccessful. It was very successful, but just to run the ball a few more times, just to possess it a little bit longer and keep the defense off the field, allow them to rest up in what was a pretty hot game last Saturday here in Lawrence. So I think he's going to have a huge role in this game, especially if Highshaw still can't go. And Williams is one of those players who he's not necessarily going to get the most explosive runs in the world, but he's kind of your, move the chains forward. I mean, he was at Iowa that did certainly make you think of a certain style of runner, right? But he's got pretty good vision. He's got just enough juice, just enough speed. I think if he has a big game, it'll be super beneficial to the offensive line. It'll be beneficial to Daniels. It'll be beneficial to the defense. And I think at this point in time, Kansas needs that, especially with some of their coverage struggles, some of the defensive backs really struggling in the Missouri and the Cincinnati games because those UCF receivers are fast. They're athletic. Yep. They've got some length out there. So I think that's going to be as important for anybody on either side of the ball for KU.
Yeah. Look, from the KU side, if you're looking at other guys to watch, it feels pretty obvious to name the quarterback, but wide receiver Dwayne Thomas Jr. has emerged as an absolute dynamite receiver on this team. And then there's Jaden Nixon, who he transferred in, and Miles Montgomery got the first shot, but Jaden was a guy who we were told in camp was absolutely killing it. And his early season struggles were a little surprising, but he's shown the burst and he's shown the big playability. Again, a very boom or bust there in the run game for UCF, that if he gets loose, it's going to take a lot of pressure off of Jaden. I know Scott Frost, I'm sorry, I said Tayven Jackson. Scott Frost I think he's playing a little bit of a cat and mouse game here. I know they got the injury report and he wants KU to have to prepare for 3 quarterbacks. So yeah, I got these 2 guys that are hurt, and you could
see this is rude. Scott Frost had enough success against Kansas when he was playing at Nebraska. He doesn't mean to be playing the mind games too. It's not cool.
Tayven Jackson's going to go if he can go, but certainly I think if you got to find a way to keep him upright, and the run game is the perfect way. Let Jaden Nixon and those guys carry the load. Again, 2 very good defensive lines for both these teams, but you've got to find some success somewhere, and UCF is struggling to find consistency in the run game. They've got to find it this week versus Kansas. You got to get your first Big 12 conference win under your belt, man. If you're Scott Frost, this is a big one here. So try to keep some momentum. A 4-1 start would be dynamite in year 1. But if you're Kansas, your whole season is still in front of you as well, too, at this point. So Yep, you got a couple losses on the schedule, but your season's not over because one of those was to Missouri. So I'm not saying that a non-conference loss
they're good.
doesn't count,
Yeah.
but you know, understand what I'm saying? Like you're as far as every goal is in front of you in the Big 12 right now if you're Kansas and UCF. So super pivotal matchup, I think, for both teams.
Yeah, and to your point on the receiver, I know they use him sometimes in the slot. KU gave up 14 of 16 over the middle against Cincinnati last week. 14 of 16.
Yikes.
So if you just want to reflect that and say a key player to watch for KU, Lyric Rawls, he was off to a great start this week or this year. Really struggled last week in Cincinnati. They need a bounce back from him to kind of impose the will over the middle.
The spread on this one is interesting to me. Right now, we've got 4.5 point spread, I believe. Is this a coin flip? Is it not? We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCF and Locked On Jayhawks. It's a Locked On crossover. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than just simply move, guys. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the deals. Mazda brings the same attention to how they craft every single model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. Like UCF and Kansas players, they sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode of Locked On UCF is also brought to you by our friends at Square. Square makes local businesses go. Your favorite neighborhood spot probably runs on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's a sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for the game, or the beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for 10, 20 years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/Locked On College to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, we'll see you in the neighborhood. Four and a half points, man. This is going to be, according to the Vegas guys, a very stressful game for both teams. Talk to me, man. And give me the least homer take you can possibly give me on this one. Kansas, you taking Kansas 5.5 or UCF plus 5.5?
Man, I have a hard time after seeing the way the defense looked last week against Cincinnati, going on the road in a difficult environment, laying that many points. But this is what's nerve-wracking to me. If this does end up being as close of a game as Vegas is insinuating, Kansas has really had problems in one-score games. And I know that was kind of the case for Scott Frost at Nebraska. So it'll be interesting. But Cincinnati came into the Kansas game last week. They had lost 9 straight one-score games. They beat Kansas. Kansas last year was 1-5 in one-score games. Already this year, you're 0-1 because of Cincinnati. The Missouri game wasn't a one-score game in the end, but it kind of was. It was 31-28. You were winning with like 5 minutes to go. You were down 35-31 with like 3 minutes to go, and you had the ball. So basically, you have, and now Kansas is 1-8 in their last 9 in one-score games. So I'll say this: if Vegas is right about this being a close game, that could be problematic for KU, given that it is on the road. Weird things can happen in college football, especially a night game, and that Kansas has really had problems in those close games.
Yeah, look, I think give me UCF in the points here. If you're giving me UCF plus 5.5, I think I could see UCF losing this game, but covering. I mean, I believe it'll be close. The ESPN matchup predictor giving Kansas a 55.9% chance to win this game, albeit on the road for the Jayhawks. But if you're UCF, you have some glaring deficiencies, and I think this is super accurate considering what you're measuring UCF against based on who they've played. if you're Kansas, you played Missouri out of conference, you played West Virginia, you played Kansas, your 2-conference game and a P4 game in. And if you're UCF, we've got a terrible North Carolina team and a 1-3 Kansas State team that ran you. So I'm not sure that they know what to make of UCF. I think, again, they'll be in this game, and it will be a close game. So I like the percentages there. I think the matchup predictor has this one nailed. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Knights pull it out. But when you've got a 5.5-point spread, it could be the one more turnover that does it. It could be, that one play that one team makes. It could be, or is home field advantage enough to push UCF over the top? If there's a final drive to win the game, it helps to be in your own stadium when you need that one more score. So, yeah, I like UCF to cover in this one, but they set the over-under at 54.5, which is I mean, that's a game in the mid-20s. Do you see this one playing out that way?
See, I'm at a point now where, because I thought last week was going to be the under. We were coming off a game in which KU shut down the West Virginia offense, and I didn't think Cincinnati would. And then all of a sudden it ends up being 37-34, and neither team could stop each other. So I am laying myself off totals for the foreseeable future. My theory is that with Kansas, the defense has certain things they're good at. They have certain things they're really bad at. And so if you can exploit those things, it's going to give them a problem. Because of the schedule that UCF has played that you kind of just laid out there, I don't have a great feel for what UCF is coming into this game. Now, I didn't have a great feel for Cincinnati either, because their schedule was kind of similar coming in terms of, they had the close Nebraska loss, but then they played maybe the worst team in the FCS after that. They played Bowling Green and won by 14. So I didn't really know what they were either. And so from that perspective, I have no idea, because this is going to go one of two ways. Either the defensive lines are going to play really well and take advantage of some matchup advantages against the opposing offensive lines, and there's going to be, a lot of disruption, and it's going to make the score a little bit lower. Or if the KU secondary continues to struggle and the KU defense continues to struggle, but KU's able to still hit their explosive passing plays like we've seen recently, then it's going to be an easy over. So I think this would be one that, honestly, I would be playing an alt line. I would either, if it goes over, I think it's going to go over. Okay. So maybe you look into, getting a little extra boosted odds, and if it doesn't hit, it goes under. But if it goes over, I think it goes over by, maybe 7 to 10 points more.
Oh, wow. Okay. Look, I'm a big on predictions. So before we get out of here, I'm calling this one 27-24 UCF. I think the Knights get the win. I like them to cover. If they lose, I still like them to cover, but I like that over under here, and I think you're dead on with how this one could play out. Give me a score here before we get out of here.
I'll take 31-27 Kansas. That would be a UCF cover. I'll give them a little faith that maybe the 1-score games reverts and they get some lucky fumble or something their way on the road. I think it'll have their full attention because they're coming off a loss, which can be important for college kids. But I think morale is a little bit low right now for KU fans with expectations after the Cincinnati game. So we'll see.
Yeah, morale is all over the place for UCF fans right now. I think that they want to hope, but they got mouths aside from Gus last year, and so they don't know what to think here. I don't know what to think. I've had him do this to me twice, so I'm very traumatized, Derek. Look, I want to thank you for joining the show today, guys. Do me a favor, go on over to Locked On Jayhawks and hit that subscribe button. Support our fellow Locked On host. Derek does a great job covering the Jayhawks. He's going to do a great job. Hopefully you'll come back and talk to us shortly after the game here so we can talk about what happened one way or the other. That's it for another great edition of Locked On UCF and Locked On Jayhawks, a Locked On crossover. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. It's another big moment at Locked On, Derek. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A Locked On college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season and only on Fire TV. Catch us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF and Locked On Jayhawks. It's a Locked On crossover.